Blue Marvel. Marvel has several powerhouse characters who are effectively its answers to Superman, and one of those heroes is Hyperion. Ever since the first incarnation of the character debuted in Avengers number 69, Hyperion has been one of the most powerful figures in the Marvel multiverse in all of his forms, but none of those forms have been as destructive or dangerous as King Hyperion, a reality-traveling threat who destroyed entire worlds and their most powerful heroes before making his way into the main Marvel universe. But King Hyperion didn't stand a hope in hell against the Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel Adam Brashear is one of the best Marvel superheroes, one of my favorites and one of the absolutely undefeatable. He's taken on all the Avengers' entire alien armadas, he has lifted a meteor the size of Arkansas and guided it away, and he's uppercutted the hell out of the Ultimate Universe Hulk. Hyperion says he's defeated Blue Marvels before, but he hasn't faced Earth 616's. While he put Blue Marvel down initially, when Hyperion threatened the innocent bystanders nearby, Blue Marvel found a new strength. Letting loose in a way he hadn't before, it took 5 blows before Hyperion was out cold and Blue Marvel stood over him victorious. Number 9. Thor and Hyperion. With the end of the multiverse staring down the heroes of the 616 Marvel Universe across the Jonathan Hickman run on Avengers and New Avengers, Thor and a handful of other heroes like Hyperion, Starbrand, Nightmask, Ex Nihilo, and Abyss ventured across the multiverse to confront the Beyonders, responsible for the collapse of the Marvel multiverse. Now, wielding the Hammer of Thor, that's with 2 R's, which can only be used by those that are considered unworthy, Thor went into battle alongside the others, giving everything he had and helping bring down just 2 of the Beyonders at the cost of his arm in New Avengers number 32. Now, after facing just 2 of the Beyonders, only Thor and Hyperion survived the battle. Unfortunately, that battle ended just for another to begin as an entire army of Beyonders descended upon them. In one of the most badass moments in Marvel Comics, realizing that Thor can no longer wield Thor with 2 R's hammer because he has proven himself worthy once again, Thor and Hyperion laugh together and race each other to Valhalla as they throw themselves into this one final battle against an enemy that they have no hope of defeating. Number 8. Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau is an insanely powerful cosmic hero, and being one of the heroes to hold the title of Captain Marvel, we would expect no less. Way back in Avengers number 248, a battle was taking place between the Avengers and various Olympians. One of the main fights taking place was between Zeus, a sky father on par with Odin himself, and the god of thunder himself, Thor. Now, to be quite frank, Zeus thrashed Thor like he was a badly behaved little boy. Zeus had Thor down and is about to literally wipe him from this plane of existence when out of nowhere, Monica Rambeau shows up. Shooting Zeus with a little blast of energy that cuts his arm, she orders him to back off of Thor or she will do much worse. Now, Zeus, obviously not seeing her as a threat, fires off a lightning bolt that simply phases right through her living light body, doing absolutely nothing to her. So, in retaliation, she tells him the gloves are off and flies in, hitting Zeus with a blast that lights up the entirety of Olympus. And while Zeus was not defeated, Thor makes note of the fact that Monica hurt him more than any mortal had ever done before, and it shows. Number 7. Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is easily one of the strongest of Marvel's cosmic heroes. He can do some absolutely insane things, and he has had some massively impressive fights. But one of the ones that I think shows just how powerful he is would be his first ever fight against Null, the symbiote god. At the start of 2018's Guardians of the Galaxy series by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw, the Silver Surfer was swallowed in a black hole that transported him billions of years into the past, landing him in Silver Surfer Black. At the beginning of time, Silver Surfer faced Null in battle when the symbiote god was just beginning to rise in power, and it was one hell of a fight. Null proved to be an extremely difficult opponent, which we know he is from his fight against literally all of Earth's heroes. Silver Surfer was going to the extent of his power trying to defeat Null in combat, and Null is still getting the best of him using All Black the Necro Sword and his other symbiotes. With Surfer on the ropes facing off against the God of Darkness, he uses the last little bits of his power cosmic that he has to create an entirely new sun point blank in front of Null's creepy little face. While he knows it doesn't defeat Null permanently, it does defeat him for the time being, and it's just super awesome.
Number 6. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus is a villain who might be well respected among Spider-Man fans, but on a greater scale, he's not likely someone you think of when you think of like a global level supervillain threat. When you think of someone who's, I don't know, unstoppable, who doesn't, hold back. Usually we think of him as being a little bit more reserved. But while he might not share the status of comic book villains like Doctor Doom, it doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to instill that level of fear among the superhero community. After all, when Doc Ock chose to stop holding back, oh, and he did, when he lay on his deathbed, he was able to seemingly do something most villains have struggled for years to do: permanently defeat Spider-Man by tricking him into swapping bodies with him, which is pretty crazy. And then for a while we thought Spider-Man was literally gone, but he wasn't, because comics. Number 5. Upside Down Man. While not officially stated as such, the Upside Down Man is kind of godlike in his appearance in DC Comics. He is, I would say, the dark reflection of Hecate, who is quite dark herself, clearly, so that's saying something, as she is considered to be a goddess and powerful witch. So I think this means we can basically consider him to be at a god level or beyond, honestly, when he wants to be. And of course, Upside Down Man proved how brutal he could be when he chose to attack all of reality, threatening to devour the entire multiverse in Justice League Dark. Number 4. Chthon. For those who are not familiar, Chthon is often attached to Scarlet Witch in Marvel Comics and is a demonic elder god, one of the oldest entities in the Marvel Universe. He is the one who is often believed to have granted Scarlet Witch her chaos magic abilities, and has been known from time to time to possess Wanda, as such, using her as his host. While Doctor Strange has faced and defeated Chthon before, there have been times when the villain has proven to be even too powerful for other super powerful magic users to handle, like Doctor Strange, and even himself often a villain, Doctor Doom. At one point, Chthon threatened to bridge the gap between his realm and Earth, using the Darkhold as a kind of bridge. He assumed a physical form and threatened to basically conquer Earth. The only one who was able to stop him was Scarlet Witch, and even then, Wanda couldn't defeat him permanently, and instead kept him imprisoned within his own book, the Darkhold, which she keeps basically within herself, using the text in Chthon to basically bolster her own power. I'm sure nothing can go wrong with that, right? Number 3. Anti-Monitor. The Justice League has many powerful villains, but the Anti-Monitor is one of honestly the most terrifying. His control of the antimatter universe and the ability to threaten the multiverse make him an unstoppable force. During Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Anti-Monitor refused to hold back and caused massive, and I mean massive, destruction, as his determination to end everything terrified readers. Even after his defeat, the threat remained, as Necron held his body, taking it and actually repurposing it to be used as a power source for the Black Central Power Battery. I mean, Black Lanterns are not good, they are bad guys, but at the end of the day, you have to admit at least they're good at recycling. Number 2. Enchantress. Oddly enough, despite both being very much tied to the world of magic over at Marvel Comics, Enchantress doesn't often get to face off against people like the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, which you would think she would because she's a very magical villain and he's a very magical hero. However, during the Acts of Vengeance crossover event, she did end up getting matched up for battle with him in his series Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme. In issue number 12, we see these two face off, and Enchantress, along with Executioner, proves to be actually too much even for Doctor Strange to handle, which might surprise you, but that's how it went. First of all, he is successfully seduced into attending a meeting with Amora the Enchantress in the evening, not even seemingly recognizing her as the Enchantress previous to her reveal. Then they begin to battle, and Enchantress and Executioner's Asgardian heritage makes them seemingly too much for Strange to handle. Fortunately, Clea shows up just in time to save his magic butt, but as with many other superhero battles against Enchantress, Strange honestly got lucky. I feel like a lot of people get lucky when they fight Enchantress because she is always a powerhouse, and she often does not hold back, to be real with you. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Although he may currently be defeated in the comics, make no mistake that the Batman Who Laughs remains one of the most terrifying characters to come out of DC Comics' Dark Multiverse. I miss the Dark Multiverse. Batman Who Laughs hails from Earth -22 and is a version of Bruce Wayne who ended up being turned insane by exposure to the Joker venom. When Batman Who Laughs stops holding back, you honestly better watch out. Batman Who Laughs would serve Barbados, the Bat-God, and later go on to ally himself with and later even betray, if you can believe it, Perpetua, revealing the whole time that he actually planned to conquer the multiverse himself, so he might shape it in his own image, becoming one of the most feared villains in all of DC's history. You know that you're a crazy villain when you're just like betraying villains like left and right and being like, oh, this was actually part of my plan the whole time, to go with you, betray you, and then take over the multiverse. That's crazy.
Alright, let's get something straight here. Bobby Drake is one of the most powerful superheroes, period. Because his power isn't over ice or cold, it's based on molecular motion. He has the power to influence the speed of molecules, thereby freezing or melting things. This power is obscenely powerful. It's been shown to prevent nuclear explosions. He created ice walls so thick and strong it contained the Hulk, with the thought he can freeze the molecules in a person and dissipate their body. He has the ability to block other mutants from accessing their powers, and in organic ice form you can destroy his body and he can still reform it, making him pretty much invincible. He can use the surrounding moisture to grow in size and gaining superhero strength in the process. Even though he's done all these things, he still hasn't tapped all of his potential, so guys, he's S tier, what can I say? At number 9 is the Sentry. Honestly, this dude should probably be at number 1, but what can I say, I'm a bit biased. The Sentry is a big shot in the Marvel world who packs a serious punch. He's matched up against the Hulk in a brawl and can shoot out energy blasts like nobody's business. Plus, he's got this mind mojo that could probably touch all minds around the globe, but here's the kicker, his mind is a mess. He's got this dark side called the Void that messes things up whenever he tries to do good. The more good he does, the worse the Void acts out to balance it. So he's actually scared to max out all of his abilities because he's afraid of what might happen in terms of his alter ego, the Void. Once his brain went haywire, and thanks to Norman Osborn's sneaky tricks, Sentry went berserk on Asgard, on all of Asgard, nearly taking it down on his ones. He even tore the Greek god of war Ares into two without breaking a sweat. It was only when he got a grip on his mind for a bit that he held the Void off, letting Thor finish the job. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing the notification bell. It helps get the video be seen to more people, and it's free, so why not? At number 8 is Dr. Fate. This dude wields crazy magical powers. Like, think magic on a whole nother level. This guy can do a bunch of stuff like casting spells, reading minds, moving things with his mind, telekinesis. Plus, everybody who's taken on the role of Dr. Fate can make themselves crazy strong and basically invincible. But their power isn't limited by some external force or lack of mojo. No, it's all about control. Dr. Fate's power is reigned by the person wearing the helmet, the host. Without the host, Fate is just powerless. The host's mind clashes with the source of this magic sometimes, Naboo, but if they don't agree on what to do, the host can slam the brakes on Fate's power trips. At number 7 is Doctor Strange. Despite being the mega sorcerer supreme dude, he has this thing where he's holding back a ton of power. Like, seriously, the guy's got magic mojo that could basically sort out all conflicts in a snap. In the big Civil War mess, the Watchers said Strange could have just blinked and ended the whole ordeal. But what does he do instead? Chilling in his quiet time, hoping everyone else would just, get along. After that, when he finally gets into action in the new Avengers crew, he's holding back his powers like crazy. But when he's forced to ramp it up and use the heavy duty stuff, especially against the Hulk, he totally messes the Hulk up. However, diving into these dark magic vibes costs him big time. He eventually would come to lose his title as the Sorcerer Supreme because he went too deep into the dark side of magic. That's where all the power is, though.
Number 6, Superman. In Superman number 127, we are introduced to Titano the Super Ape. Now, he started off as a smart ape named Toto that was sent into space, but then was accidentally exposed to radiation from 2 colliding meteors. Now this, for some reason, grew Toto into a massive King Kong style ape who was now named Titano, and it also gave Titano the ability to fire rays of green kryptonite out of his eyes. I don't know. Obviously that is a big problem for Superman, who couldn't really get in close to this super crypto vision ape. But luckily, Superman's girlfriend is able to trick Titano into wearing lead sunglasses that stop the kryptonite rays, at which point Superman just picked up the giant super ape and threw him back through time. Superman chucked his super monkey through time back to the prehistoric era where he could interact with dinosaurs. Yes, Superman is so strong that he can literally throw things through time. He's also thrown Jimmy Olsen through time before, but who cares? This is a giant ape. Number 5. Franklin Richards. While he may not be considered entirely a cosmic level superhero, Franklin Richards, the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, is destined to become a key factor in the cosmic landscape of the Marvel Universe. His power to warp reality is so great that he has created entire pocket universes. Now, in one reality, appearing in Fantastic Four Volume 1, number 604, Franklin appeared as an adult, and we saw a glimpse of just how powerful he can be. In the story, a grown Franklin and Valeria Richards worked together with their grandfather, Nathaniel Richards, to travel into the past to influence their younger counterparts and to help fight against the Mad Celestials that were threatening the entire world. Galactus was called on by the Fantastic Four to help, and although he brought down one Celestial, the others combined their power and were too much for Galactus to handle. Enter Franklin. Restoring Galactus and imbuing him with enough cosmic energy to stand up to the Celestials, Franklin turned Galactus into his own herald, defeating the Celestials and then being humble enough to give up that power after the fight was over. All the other heroes could do was just look up into the sky and watch in awe. It was actually kinda epic. Number 4. John Stewart Green Lantern. A Green Lantern's power ring is capable of almost anything, but even it has its limits. However, that didn't stop John Stewart from attempting to recreate an entire solar system in Green Lantern number 26. When reflecting on the destruction of the planet Xanshi and its solar system, which is an event that John blames himself for, the hero tried his damnedest to try and bring the world back with just his ring. He broke past the programming of his ring and got pretty damn close to completely rebuilding the entire solar system. Unfortunately, such a construct was too much even with John's iron will, but the fact that he got so close shows how far a power ring can really go when effort is put into it. But let's try one even more than that, shall we? Yeah. Number 3. Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan was possibly the greatest Green Lantern ever, according to the comics at least. But in the 90s, that kinda changed. After the death of Superman and the subsequent reign of the Supermen, Coast City, Hal Jordan's home, was destroyed. This completely changed the Lantern, and he completely broke the programming of his own power ring to revive the city. He created the entire city's layout with all of its buildings, parks, streets, everything. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't the same. It needed life. So Hal went completely against the Green Lantern's rules and made constructs of all the once living inhabitants of Coast City, millions of people. When the Guardians of the Universe tried to stop him, he completely snapped. He went off the handle, ending the lives of every Green Lantern and naming himself Parallax. Hal became a threat to the whole DC universe for like a decade before eventually sacrificing himself. Sure, he went bad, but he absolutely did not hold back against anyone. Number 2. Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apokolips but adopted by the gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none, and in one of his many displays of pure power, he completely wipes out his father. When Darkseid came to Earth, heroes like the Atom and an empowered Jimmy Olsen fought him until a boom tube opened up and Orion came out. The heroes stood aside and let Orion fight Darkseid on his own, and he absolutely wrecked the guy in one slog of a fight. At the end of the fight, after beating down on Darkseid to the level of wiping out entire city blocks, Orion wiped out Darkseid by plunging his hand straight into his father's chest, grabbing his fiery heart and ripping it out clean, leaving Darkseid as a pile of charred bones. And finally, in number 1 today, the Sentry. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle the Hulk was sent to Sakaar in by the Illuminati at the beginning blows up, wiping out Hulk's new family and the lives of millions of individuals on Sakaar. This pushes the Hulk into a whole new level of anger, which is directed squarely at the Illuminati. So he headed to Earth with his war sworn. When he got to Earth, after quickly stopping at the moon to wreck Black Bolt, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated, and when that time limit stopped, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, and the Ghost Rider, all while saving innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them only as he sought justice, not to end lives. Well, the Illuminati had one last-ditch effort to stop the Hulk. The Sentry. Coming in against probably the only being who could take it, Sentry unleashed almost everything he had against the Hulk, leveling city blocks and causing a massive column of fire. These two went blow for blow over and over until they both used up so much energy that they reverted back to their regular human forms, with a depowered Bruce Banner getting in a final punch to bring Sentry down.
At number 10, it was just an accident. In one event, Spider-Man accidentally caused the demise of Agent Charlemagne. She put herself in harm's way, intercepting a blow meant for Wolverine, leading to her tragic demise. This incident weighed heavily on Spider-Man's conscience, leaving a lasting impact on him. Despite encounters where he unintentionally caused demises, Charlemagne's loss affected him profoundly, marking the first time he ever felt directly responsible for taking a life. Spider-Man struggled with guilt and remorse, grappling with the weight of his actions, unable to forgive himself for what happened. This experience added a layer of complexity to his journey, highlighting the emotional toll and ethical dilemmas heroes face when confronting the consequences of their actions. At number 9 is his fight against Firelord. Firelord is a cosmic being who's held his own against some heavy hitters like Thor, the X-Men, and even went toe-to-toe with the Phoenix Force. But in one instance, he clashed with Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 270. Spider-Man had a different approach, opting to outsmart rather than overpower. He led Firelord on a wild chase through the city, trying unconventional methods to take him out, like luring him into a building set for demolition, or a gas station to explode and exploit his powers. Despite the relentless effort, none of these ploys managed to take Firelord down. The most unexpected strategy of all was simply to, well, punch him a lot. Spider-Man's persistence paid off, and through a frenzied attack, he inadvertently triumphed. So much so that the Avengers had to actually step in and intervene, pulling Spider-Man off of Firelord's body. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Back in Black story, where Spider-Man's shift back to his black costume marks a darker turn. Discovering Kingpin's role in Aunt May's assassination attempt, Peter Parker unleashes his hidden strength. He abandons his usual wit, publicly confronting and absolutely brutalizing Kingpin, revealing the immense power he often restrains against his weaker foes. Spider-Man goes as far as threatening Kingpin's life if he ever endangers the Parkers again, a stance he takes to the extreme in a separate reality explored in the What If series. This narrative showcased Spider-Man's capacity for extreme actions when pushed to his limit, emphasizing the consequences of his unparalleled strength when gone unchecked. At number 7 is the iconic Superior Spidey vs. Scorpion. During the Superior Spider-Man comic arc, where Dr. Octopus seizes control of Spider-Man's body and unleashes a devastating punch that cleanly knocks the jaw off of Scorpion. This punch, almost effortless for Peter Parker, shocks Doc Ock, revealing the immense power Spider-Man had concealed this whole time. It's a stark revelation that Spider-Man had been restraining his immense strength all along. It dawns on Dr. Octopus that Peter Parker was holding back in their battles, a realization that astounds him. The notion that Spider-Man in his kindness or self-restraint had refrained from using his full force against adversaries left Doc Ock surprised at the level of power at Peter Parker's disposal. At number 6 is Professor Xavier, the big brain behind the X-Men. He packs a serious telepathic punch. He's almost like a superhero wizard in the X-Men universe, as only a handful can match his mind-meddling prowess. Picture this, he can slip into multiple minds simultaneously, chat across crazy distances, and even erase memories. The thing is, Xavier's mind isn't all sunshines and rainbows. At one point, a spooky Xavier doppelganger took a swing at the new gen X-Men. It was his repressed dark side breaking loose due to a whole bunch of stress. Then, down the line, a mashup of his power and Magneto's worst bits birthed Onslaught. This guy was super mega powerful and mega bad. It took a truckload of heroes to zap him out. Now Xavier's pushing daisies, but in comic land, staying unalive isn't permanent. At number 5 is the Flash. See, the thing about force, not the speed force just yet, although I'll talk about it in a second, but just applied force in general, is that the strength behind your blow is dependent on the mass of your fist and the acceleration. And while Barry's got a thin frame, he basically maxes out the acceleration, meaning he can pack a serious punch. See, Barry Allen's not just about running fast. He's got a lot more under his red suit. Barry packs a punch with his powers, generating crazy amounts of energy and tapping into something called the Speed Force, which basically grants him mind-bending abilities like time travel and hopping between dimensions. So why doesn't he unleash his full power? Maybe because he's scared of turning out like a speedster foes, or a subconscious reluctance due to his painful past losing his folks and dealing with his dad's wrongful imprisonment. At number 4 is Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards, son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, is a big deal in Marvel Comics. Imagine having the strength of a god, but being just a kid. As a toddler, he had these mind-bending abilities that were super risky. His dad, Mr. Fantastic, thought it was better to wait until Franklin was older before letting him loose with these powers. Then there was this huge incident called Onslaught that I mentioned earlier. The bad guy wanted to get even more powerful by teaming up with Franklin. Franklin's reality-bending skills helped Onslaught fight off big shots like the X-Men, the Avengers, and more. Sadly, some heroes ended up sacrificing themselves to stop Onslaught. But Franklin's powers are so epic that space gods called the Celestials even took notice. Now recently, even though his powers have been nerfed, they seem to be making a comeback, so when the Fantastic Four do make a comeback, Franklin might just hold the key to saving, or maybe even deciding the fate of the whole universe yet again. And number 3 is Superman. Superman, you know, that superhero dude, seriously strong. Like, seriously strong. He's got all these powers that are like, make him faster than a speeding bullet, stronger than a train, jump really high, but here's the thing, he has to hold back, like, all the time. Like, imagine having to open a door gently, afraid that you might yank it off its hinges by accident. That's basically his daily life. When he fights bad guys, he can't just go all out. No, he has to be careful not to wreck everything around him, and including the bad guy's face. Even the baddest of bad guys like Darkseid or Doomsday can't match him, so he's gotta play smart. His powers of flying and shooting lasers from his eyes are pretty awesome for beating baddies, but he's gotta be careful. At number 2 is Goku. Now I know this one isn't Marvel or DC, but I'm sure y'all can forgive me, because Goku is just a badass. Originally thought to be from Earth, this Saiyan warrior with extraordinary strength packs some serious punch. But he often holds back, so like he can unleash mind-bending top-tier strength whenever he wants, but he never really does. See, Goku's got this thing where he holds back during fights, as a superhero can defeat the bad guys in a snap, but he decides to take it slow, giving the villains a chance to catch up. Weird, but that's Goku for you. He's got this move called the Ki, thinking of it as a superpower juice that he could shoot from his hands, but instead of going all out and ending fights quick, he enjoys stretching out the battles. He fought this dude called Cell once, but he didn't go full throttle because he just wanted to keep things interesting. He'd rather have a thrilling fight than just outright crush his opponents. The thing is, with hardly anyone in his universe capable of matching his strength, Goku rarely shows what he's really made of. And at number 1 is Spider-Man. Like I said, you guys, I'm biased. But not really, because Spider-Man often seems to have power that's kind of on the down low. See, back in the day, Spidey had a tough time fighting big baddies like the Sinister Six. But fast forward, and now he's slinging punches with the best of them, even taking down the Hulk in one comic arc. During the Superior Spider-Man storyline where Doc Ock takes over Spider-Man's body, things got really eye-opening as Doc Ock threw a punch at Scorpion, thinking that he knew Spidey's strength, but bam! He ended up accidentally ripping Scorpion's jaw right off his head. That shocked Doc Ock big time and made him realize that Spider-Man was holding back all this immense power every time they clashed. Imagine all those fights where Spider-Man could have crushed his enemies with one hit, but he didn't. Superheroes holding back their full strength might be all about responsibility or just not wanting to hurt anyone too bad. Sometimes it's mind-blowing to see what they could do if they unleashed their full power. And as always, if there is a super powerful villain that keeps it to himself that you think I've missed, feel free to let me know down in the comments, and maybe, just maybe, this video gets enough attention, I'll include your suggestions in the next iteration of this list. At number 10 is Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul isn't your typical bad guy. He's the big boss of the League of Assassins, a group that's been specializing in, you guessed it, assassinations. But there's more to him than just that. His constant swims in the Lazarus pits messed up his humanity big time. He's practically more of a devil than a regular person. Now, for those of you uninitiated in Batman lore, the Laz pits are those pools of green goo that are kind of like DC's own Fountain of Youth, as these supernatural reservoirs are capable of instantly healing any injury, resurrecting the deceased, or even granting immortality. Ra's discovered these pits centuries ago, allowing him to carry out his assassination business indefinitely. Now, while these pits are great for his mortality, this prolonged use of these pits does come at a cost to his morality. I mean, what does he really need that anyways, being a supervillain and literally the boss of an assassination business? I digress. Whenever he does take a dip in these pits, his plans get worse. Like, way worse. He goes toe-to-toe with Batman a lot, claiming that he's all about saving the planet, but here's a twist. He thinks that wiping out almost all of humanity is the way to do it. Yeah, you heard me right. Ra's al Ghul believes that the best solution for Earth is to get rid of almost everyone so that the survivors can be ruled by a chosen few. Yeah, definitely not your average bad guy. At number 9 is Lady Shiva, a top-notch assassin in Gotham City who doesn't hold back when it comes to dishing out pain. Her expertise in combat and precision unaliving makes her one of the most sought-after mercenaries in the DC multiverse, even among leagues of assassins that have skin in the game for centuries. Now, unlike other villains, Shiva isn't about physical pain. See, she knows how to hurt in various ways. You see, inflicting pain is an art form to her, so it's not just about landing punches or using weapons. No. Shiva knows that hurting someone's pride or sense of self can be just as agonizing. She's not afraid to make her victims suffer in ways that go beyond the bodies. Now, what sets her apart from less patient villains is her understanding that keeping someone alive allows for prolonged suffering compared to a quick demise. So while she's fully ready, willing, and definitely capable of ending lives, she prefers to keep her victims just on the edge of life, ensuring they feel every ounce of pain she inflicts for as long as possible. Lady Shiva doesn't just stop at physical harm, she's a master at making pain linger in every possible way. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing the notification bell. It's free! At number 8 is Bane. Bane is one of Batman's toughest foes, and he didn't have an easy life. He learned to protect himself while spending his entire youth in the world's most lethal confinement center. But that protection and need for self-defense eventually turned into a liking for violence. At the age of only 8, he committed his first unaliving. Yeah, while y'all were probably still potty training, Bane was out here terminating folks. As he got older, things got even more intense. Some scientists forcibly used him as a guinea pig to test out this substance called Venom, which I wish was the Venom from Marvel, but no. In this case, it's basically steroids on steroids. Bane got addicted to it and gained super strength. His unique mix of both strategic brains and excessive brawn make him a huge danger to Batman and frankly all of Gotham. What makes Bane especially frightening is his habit of breaking Batman's back. It's like he's always trying to prove he's the toughest, scariest guy around, and with his strength and smarts, it's hard to disagree. At number 7 is Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy is a swampy figure in the DC comics who's typically portrayed as, how do you put it nicely so he doesn't come after me, a bit dumb. Now, don't get me wrong, Grundy isn't your run-of-the-mill villain. He's often played as a pawn, easily tricked into doing bad stuff by the big baddies. Now, sometimes though, he hangs with the good guys, but that's exceedingly rare. See, the thing about Grundy is he's a bit of a wild card. When someone's got a hold on him, he's like their attack dog. Imagine being nearly impossible to knock out and always up for causing trouble. That's basically Grundy in a nutshell. His loyalty to whoever's pulling his strings combined with his own stubbornness make him a real wrecking ball. Now, since he's already undead, putting him down is seriously tough. So he doesn't get knocked out often, which means he's always ready to dish out some serious hurt. It's like dealing with a force of nature that's not gonna stop until he's done with you. At number 6 is Morlun. In 2001's The Amazing Spider-Man, a grim brawl unfurled between Spider-Man and the villain Morlun. Unlike his usual foes, Morlun fed on spider essence, making this encounter particularly dangerous for Spidey. But aware of Morlun's weakness to radiation, Spidey weaponized his own tainted spider essence against him. Inflicting a potentially lethal dose, Spider-Man hesitated when Morlun begged for mercy, only for the villain's minion to swiftly finish him off. Though Spider-Man didn't deal the final blow here, he purposefully brought Morlun to the edge of demise. Not only did this arc introduce intriguing new powers to Spider-Man, but also showcased a darker, more ruthless side of the hero, revealing a brutal aspect of Spider-Man's character which hinted at a threshold he'd teeter on, where mercy tangled with the urge for justice. At number 5 is the Grim Hunt. In this saga, the grim hunt, Spider faced the Karvinoff family's wrath in their ruthless quest targeting spider-powered heroes. Unlike the typical Spider-Man tales, this story gets intense. You see, when he's pushed to his limit, he unleashes a darker side, and in a shockingly violent act, Spidey uses his unique adhesive abilities to brutally retaliate against a Karvinoff member for eliminating his clone Kane, tearing off the villain's face. Yeah, this narrative marked a departure from Spidey's usual moral code, showcasing a grittier, more aggressive side of our friendly neighborhood hero, revealing how far he'd go and push beyond his limits. At number 4, tossing tanks and trucks. In the heat of battle against Green Goblin, Ultimate Spider-Man did something extraordinary, lifting an 18-wheeler truck and bringing it down on the Green Goblin's face. At just 16, Peter showcased incredible strength, proving that age is no limit to powers. Later, facing the Absorbing Man, Spider-Man intercepted a hurled truck, showcasing his swift reflexes and superhuman strength by stopping an entire armored vehicle mid-air. Even when facing tanks and mercenaries, Spidey didn't hold back. In a high-stakes rescue mission, he hoisted a tank above his head and smashed it down. While Spider-Man's usual strength hovers around 20 tons, moments like these reveal his ability to push beyond that, especially when lives are on the line. At number 3, benching entire buildings. In Spider-Man Final Chapter, he's holding up the entire Daily Bugle, not for himself, but for everybody else's safety. And that's no easy feat too, especially when the city he's trying to protect starts turning against him. Plus, Aunt May's on a ticking time bomb, and so talk about the pressure. Here's the thing about Spidey, even when the world is on his shoulders, he doesn't buckle. He pushes through, stops that bomb, and keeps the Bugle from becoming a pile of rubble. In a separate issue, Dr. Kirk Connors aimed to use a contraption within New York sewers to rid himself of the reptilian transformation. However, unbeknownst to him, a lethal trap awaited beneath Penn Station. As Spider-Man attempted to reason with the Lizard, chaos ensued. Consumed by his primal instincts, the Lizard brought Penn Station crashing down, burying Spider-Man under its colossal weight. Aware that even the mighty Thor would falter beneath such an overwhelming burden, Peter grappled with the weight, his muscles straining against the impossible load. Yet against all odds, determination surged within him, a testament to his unwavering resolve. He defied the impossible, summoning the strength to lift the collapsed station, liberating himself from the wreckage's grasp. And lastly in this entry is in If This Be My Destiny, Spider-Man faced a monumental challenge, an entire underwater facility collapsing atop of him. Weakened by a prior fight, he struggled immensely, unable to lift the colossal weight off of himself, submerged underwater. Faced with Aunt May's life on the line, Spider-Man almost gave up before remembering how he failed to save his Uncle Ben. Unwilling to let it happen again with Aunt May, Peter resolves to fight on and lifts the giant mechanism to free himself, summoning every ounce of strength to hoist the structure, facing excruciating pain in the process. At number 2 is Juggernaut. In the showdown titled Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut, Spider-Man faced a real tough time. It was like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. You see, nothing Spidey tried seemed to make a dent in stopping that big tough dude. The Juggernaut's on a mission to nab Madame Web, thinking that her powers will give him an edge against the X-Men. But Web gets the heads up and rings Spidey for help. The thing is, it's not smooth sailing. Spider-Man tries all of his moves, but nothing sticks. The Juggernaut is just too strong and relentless. He gets dangerously close to taking Madame Web out for good, and that's when Spider-Man goes all in. He doesn't hold back anymore. Leading the Juggernaut to a construction zone, he cooks up a plan and then bam, wraps him in wet cement. Goes to show that sometimes it's not about brute strength, but about how smart and persistent you are. And in that moment, Spidey proved that determination and quick thinking can win even the toughest battles. And at number 1 is his fight against Green Goblin. When Spider-Man faced a devastating loss of Gwen Stacy, he vowed revenge against the Green Goblin. Fueled by emotions, Spidey nearly succumbs to the urge and ends the villain's life, thrashing him around with a barrage of punches. Yet amidst the chaos, he pauses, realizing his core principles. Spidey refuses to compromise his heroism by resorting to unaliving. Despite the intense desire for justice, Spider-Man confronts the Goblin, opting to defeat rather than execute. Unfortunately, Goblin had other plans concerning his glider, and I'm pretty sure we all know the rest. Spider-Man, relying on his heightened senses, narrowly avoids a fatal blow from the villain's glider, ending Green Goblin's reign without compromising his own moral code.
The inciting incident for why Peter goes off the deep end is covered in the first part of the story, and the rest is simply about what happens as a result, with Peter even returning to his black costume in the end. Not the symbiote one, just borrowing the look of that costume to reflect the fact that all color and witty quips has left him. and his approach to crime fighting. Peter, MJ, and Aunt May are all outside reminiscing about Uncle Ben when suddenly Aunt May is shot. MJ calls 911 and Peter frantically looks around to see if he can spot a shooter, but realizing that the clock is ticking and there isn't even enough time for them to wait for an ambulance for May, Peter, without his costume on, swings his way through the city and delivers her to the hospital. Meanwhile, in prison, the Kingpin receives a cryptic message from a police officer that shares his favorite quote that Euripides from the play Medea speaks: "Whom the gods would destroy, they first drive mad." Peter sets out to find out who has done this to Aunt May, mainly blaming himself though, as Peter usually does. However, here he maybe has a little bit of a reason to do that. This is because this storyline takes place after the events of the First Civil War. Now, during the First Civil War, Peter was convinced by Tony Stark's Iron Man, whom he was aligned with at the start of that event, publicly unmasked to promote the Superhero Registration Act. Peter does this, but later decides that Tony is actually in the wrong and allies himself instead with Captain America, which means since his identity as Spider-Man is public, that he and his family are constantly on the run, hopping from motel to motel. If he had never unmasked, he figures, Aunt May would have never been targeted. Probably true. Before he leaves MJ and Aunt May, he urges MJ to check Aunt May in under her maiden name, Riley, in order to protect her from further attacks. Peter returns to investigate and finds a police officer at the shooter's perch with a sniper rifle and scope nearby. He webs up the officer and basically leaves him there, just taking the scope with him, on the trail of who supplied the weapon. He finds an illegal weapon sale going on and he breaks it up, still in his civilian clothing. When Peter interrogates one of the men involved and he hesitates to give Peter the answer Peter's looking for, Peter breaks his hand. Back at the hospital, MJ visits Aunt May, whose status is critical. The doctors tell MJ that May is in a coma and that due to her old age, she is struggling to heal even with the help of the machines they have her hooked up to. As a result, they are almost certain that she won't make it. Peter swings his way up to the top of a tall building to retrieve something. This item is all webbed up, but he undoes the webbing to reveal his cloth black suit that Black Cat made for him, which he initially stopped wearing because he felt it sent the wrong message. He once again dons this suit, as I said earlier, and vows not to rest until he kills the person who is responsible for the attack on Aunt May, and finally get his revenge. In his hunt to track down Aunt May's shooter, he learns that Jake Martino was the one who purchased the specific scope he found at the scene of the crime. He discovers this after throwing one of the arms dealers that he's questioning out of a window, catching him at the last second with a thread of webbing, prompting the man to reveal the buyer as Jake. Initially, this guy didn't want to answer his questions, but throw someone out a window, all of a sudden they're changing their tune. Peter then tracks Jake down and beats him brutally, even breaking his arm. Right when Jake is about to name who hired him, however, he is shot in the chest. The person who shot Jake gets away, but Peter manages to at least hit him with a spider tracer. An ambulance arrives to take Jake to the hospital and Spider-Man goes along with him. But unfortunately, Jake dies before he can answer the question that he was about to answer before he was tragically shot in the chest. Once at the hospital, Peter runs into MJ, who passes on the tragic news that the doctors gave her. May is not going to make it. Heading back out, Spider-Man tracks down the shooter who got away just as he's on the phone with someone. Peter webs up his mouth and listens to who is on the other end, hearing the voice of Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. Fisk then asks Peter what he can do for him, and Peter responds that, well, Fisk can die. After learning who was on the phone, Peter questions the shooter, who we learn is named Jim. He finds out that Jake was actually hired to shoot Peter, not May. Spider-Man then asks why Jim shot Jake, and the man simply says that he knew something that Wilson Fisk didn't, but as to what, he doesn't know. That's all he knows. Meanwhile, back in prison, Fisk is approached by the same police officer as before. This time, Fisk has a favor to ask of him. The police officer says he'll do whatever Fisk asks as long as it doesn't break the rules. Wilson Fisk responds by saying what he is asking is beyond the rules, then smashes to pieces the desk he has in the cell and reveals that it is filled with millions of dollars in cash. He tells the officer to divide the money amongst the officers in the prison. The officer frees Fisk, and Wilson asks him to bring Fisk his usual attire. Peter takes Jim down to the sewers and ties him up, leaving him to the mercy of the rats. As Peter talks about the food chain threatening Jim, Jim becomes scared and pleads with Spider-Man, saying he'll do anything he wants. Spider-Man sees that Jim was really just another victim of Kingpin and decides not to kill him, but does tell Jim to spread the word amongst his friends to leave him and his family alone or else. Then he leaves, heading back to the hospital to pay May another visit. Hoping that his healing factor will help her, he gives her some of his own blood via a transfusion. Finally knowing who is behind the hit, he heads to the prison in his black suit to finally confront the Kingpin. Upon breaking into the prison, Peter finds Wilson surrounded by other inmates. He and Fisk fight, and Kingpin taunts him for believing in the greater good. This pushes Spider-Man to a breaking point, and he beats Fisk to within an inch of his life. He says that while Spider-Man will not kill him, Peter will. Unmasking Peter taunts and torments Fisk, saying how easy it would be with his super strength to crush Fisk, and even threatening to suffocate Fisk by shooting his webbing up Fisk's nostrils. Eventually, Kingpin shouts at Peter that if he really is going to kill him, then he should just do it now and be done with it. However, Peter responds that he won't kill him. At least not yet. He says he has done one better by defeating him and proving in front of all the other inmates at the prison how weak Wilson Fisk is. He warns everyone in the prison that if any of them ever come for him or his family, they will end up like Fisk. And he also says that Kingpin's life is now tied to May's. If she dies, then Peter will return and finish the job. Peter then leaves the prison. A defeated Kingpin and all the inmates slowly and solemnly return to their cells. Following the confrontation, Peter and MJ are forced to confront the fact that while the hospital Peter brought her to is the best, they can't really afford to keep May there. They've been paying exclusively in cash, and it's only a matter of time before someone becomes suspicious. However, Peter is distraught at the thought of moving May, so MJ agrees that they can wait a little bit longer. Peter stays up all night talking to Aunt May, hoping she'll wake up and respond, but she never does. When he steals one of her blood work reports, he learns that his blood transfusion has basically made no difference. May isn't getting better. At this point, the police show up to ask some questions. Peter senses they are in trouble with his spider sense tingling, and he is able to hide, turn off the lights, and incapacitate the officer so he, MJ, and May can escape. They illegally transport May to a new, more affordable hospital in order to protect all of their identities. This really was one of Peter's darkest eras, to be honest. Even by the end of this story, we're left with a pretty bleak resolution. May is still in the hospital, she's still on her deathbed, no longer even getting the best care possible, and Peter and MJ are both still on the run as Peter is still technically a fugitive, being hunted down by S.H.I.E.L.D. for being anti-registration. At the end of the story, Peter reflects on just how low he has fallen, acknowledging that he has committed at least 9 felonies during these events. And what's worse, his fingerprints are basically everywhere, so he could very well be arrested and convicted for these crimes. In case you also wanted to give this story a read as it was written, you can check it. In case you also wanted to give this story a read as it was written, you can check it out in the J. Michael Straczynski and Ron Garney run of The Amazing Spider-Man.
Number 10, Spider-Man vs. Firelord. I think it's a well-known fact that Spider-Man pulls his punches. It's part of the reason he is one of the best heroes, because he does everything he does while also holding back. But I always forget how much he actually pulls those punches. For example, in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 270, a black-suited Spider-Man puts one hell of a beating on a former Herald of Galactus, Firelord. Previously, Firelord had been wandering the cosmos when he stopped into New York to enjoy the culture, only to be attacked by firemen, and then kicked in the face by Spider-Man. Now, the Lord of Fire wants his revenge. After leading Firelord on a merry chase through office buildings, Grand Central Station, the subway system, into a construction zone, having a building demolished on top of them, and then leading him to a gas station which then explodes, Spider-Man, at his wit's end, musters all his effort and his spider sense to lay an incredible beatdown of speed, agility, and raw strength on Firelord, getting lost in his bloodlust until Captain America and the Avengers show up to be like, dude, you got him! Chill. Number 9, Firestorm v. Parasite. Rudolph Jones found himself exposed to a strange form of radiation which changed him into the bald, green-skinned parasite with the ability to absorb the life energy of others. In Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, issue number 86, Parasite is released from an area he is being held in and goes on a rampage, draining multiple people of their life energy, including Firehawk, who fell pretty easily to this villain. Luckily, the hero Firestorm is nearby. Now at this point in time, Firestorm has become the world's fire elemental, and received a pretty significant power boost. Almost as if to prove that fact, Firestorm comes in hot on Parasite with a blast of flame, and then when Parasite tries to drain Firestorm's power, the hero is unaffected as he says, "My powers come not from myself, but from the earth. I don't have power, I am power." And in a last-ditch effort, Parasite decides to try and trade Energy Blast with Firestorm. Unfortunately for Parasite, it is nowhere near an equal fight. He uses up all the energy he took from Firestorm, and then just trying to hold back Firestorm's blast, Parasite goes through his own reserved life energy until he is on the brink. Realizing he will lose, he begs Firestorm to stop, saying that Firestorm would bring the end for Parasite, to which Firestorm simply says, "That was my intention." Luckily for him, Parasite was saved by the allies of Firestorm, who told him to just stop, but this hero left Parasite emaciated from using up his own energy. Number 8. Batman vs. Thugs. Have you ever played the Batman Arkham games? The combat in those games is absolutely fantastic, but it still leaves me wondering how many of these random street thugs actually survive after their interaction with Batman. He hits hard, and he is pretty unforgiving about it, which serves his whole point of instilling fear. But I think because these nameless thugs are cannon fodder, they essentially get the worst beatings of most of Batman's villains, and we never hear from most of them again. That kind of tells you all you need to know. Now, as an example, let's talk about a group of thugs in the All-Star Batman and Robin series, issue 7. Now, this comic is written by Frank Miller, who seems to be able to get away with making Batman do pretty much anything. Like in the opening pages of the issue, Batman comes speeding into a group of armed thugs, foot first, maniacally laughing like the Joker, talking in his head about how Gotham is full of cockroaches. He relishes the fact that criminals are scared that they are disposing of each other accidentally. Then he sets fire to a bottle of bleach and tosses it onto the criminals, blanketing them in fire. And then he continues beating the snot out of them while they're on fire. And then what happens next? I don't really know how to explain this, but Black Canary pops up out of nowhere, and these two superheroes just start making out and getting busy while the thugs are barbecuing in the background. Unfortunately, yes, this is Batman, and it's scary. Number 7. Zombie Peter Parker. In Marvel Zombies number 2, Zombie Peter Parker and Luke Cage leave the group of cosmically superpowered zombies and, regaining their good guy nature, try to protect what's left of humanity on Earth. But they unfortunately get teleported to a different reality by Malcolm Cortez's son. In Marvel Zombies Returns, the zombie heroes end up on Earth 91126. Zombie Spider-Man thinks he can cure their zombie virus by finding the Lifeline tablet, but just as he is getting underway with the plan, he gets distracted and forced into a fight with Dr. Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, Vulture, Kraven, and Sandman, aka the Sinister Six. Despite trying his best to hold back his hunger, Spider-Man cannot resist Kraven's smell and ends up attacking him, biting into his neck. Mysterio tries using illusions, but Spider-Man's senses help him locate and dispose of Mysterio. Electro and Dr. Octopus try to attack Spider-Man together, but this just puts them in positions to hurt each other instead, with Electro using up most of his power, and Dr. Octopus left electrically deep fried for Spider-Man to eat. As they realize this is not going too well, the remaining villains try to hightail it out of there, but before Vulture can escape, Spider-Man rips off his wings and uses them to finish off Electro before he can shoot more electricity at him. Only Sandman manages to escape from the chaos, going to attack this universe's Spider-Man for this utterly sickening display of violence.
At number 6 is Professor Pig. Within the realm of Batman's rogues gallery, there's this guy named Professor Pig. Now, he's not your typical villain. Think of him as a mix between Dr. Frankenstein and the story of Pygmalion. But instead of stitching corpses together or sculpting statues, he's into creating what he calls Dollotron. Now, these Dollotrons aren't the kind of dolls you want to play with, as they're made from still living amalgamations of humans and animals. Now, Pig isn't just about scaring people or causing chaos for the fun of it. Nay, to him, it's a job, a calling, if you will. But the way he operates is just seriously disturbing. He's more about making these messed up creations using crazy chemicals, bioweapons, and surgeries, all in the name of his noble cause to mold the perfect being. But in the creepiest way possible. His methods are seriously disturbing, even by Gotham standards. He doesn't go around unaliving or torturing just because he gets a kick out of it, but it's his way of doing things that's seriously messed up. And number 5 is Black Mask. Gotham's got its fair share of bad guys, but Roman Sionis, aka Black Mask, definitely takes the cake for being the nastiest mob boss around. His crime syndicate, the False Face Society, makes the other gangs in town look like boy bands. Now, what makes Black Mask stand out? out, well, he's not exactly picky about how he gets the job done. Blades, fists, anything goes. He doesn't just stop at stealing or cheating, he revels in causing pain. The dude is so twisted that even Catwoman, who usually avoids ending lives, felt compelled to put an end to him after enduring his torment for so long. It's not just Catwoman either. Black Mask's brutality didn't sit well with Batman either. When he threatened Oracle and tortured Spoiler, Batman was inches away from crossing his moral line and taking Black Mask out himself. Pushing Batman to cross his moral boundary, that's something the Joker dreams of doing, so you know that this guy is extra twisted. At number 4 is Killer Croc, aka Waylon Jones. He embodies his name with the ferocity that matches his reptilian appearance. Bullied as a child due to his unusual looks, Jones embraced his monstrous facade, transforming into the menacing Killer Croc. His isolation fueled a disturbing transformation, leading to animalistic behaviors and extreme violence. Croc's brutality is very chilling. In most renditions, he resorts to eating people and vicious attacks using his bare claws and teeth. See, unlike other villains, he shuns conventional weapons, preferring to savage his victims directly. Unprovoked, he preys on unsuspecting individuals who wander into his territory within Gotham's murky sewers. This unrelenting savagery marks Killer Croc as one of Batman's most brutally formidable foes, embodying the darkness that exists lurking in Gotham's shadows. At number 3 is Victor Zsasz. Now, Victor over here is one of those really intense Batman villains. He's not like the others who might just rob a bank or cause a little bit of chaos. Nay, this guy is all about the unaliving. And he's not just into it, he believes life doesn't even matter. Imagine that. Each person he takes out, he actually sees as doing them a favor. And it's not just that he doesn't care, he actually enjoys taking lives. Like, a bit too much. When he's taking somebody down, it's not your average kind of unaliving you'd see in a comic book. It's super gruesome, like horror movie level stuff. Seriously, they should put a big warning on those comics because it gets super graphic. And get this, after each unaliving, he marks himself with a tally on his body. You look at him and you just see how messed up things have been because of all those scars he's covered with. It's a chilling reminder of the sheer violence he's dished out in Gotham City. At number 2 is the Electrocutioner. There have been a few guys in Batman comics that have taken up the Electrocutioner mantle, but they aren't your typical heroes. The first and second iteration were kind of like Batman, trying to do what they thought was right, but they were all about their own form of electric justice, which sometimes got pretty shocking. Then there comes the third Electrocutioner, brother of the first one. He starts out trying to be a good guy too, but things quickly go sideways. He starts getting a kick out of zapping people with his electric gear, and that's when he goes off the rails and delves into a life of crime. This guy becomes seriously dangerous, working for a nasty crime boss called the Blockbuster. Basically, these Electrocutioner dudes might have started off with good intentions, but they ended up on the wrong side of things. They're like Batman's twisted mirror images, using their shock gadgets to hurt people instead of helping them. And at number 1 is Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's transition into an anti-hero hasn't stopped her from being a formidable force, to say the least. Now, while she's not keen on hurting innocent folks, she's all about dishing out punishment to those she thinks deserves it. What makes her stand out is her choice of weapons, either a massive mallet or a good old baseball bat. With those, she gets up close and personal, shattering bones like it's nobody's business. Take the DCAU movie Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, for example. There, she sings a twisted version of If You're Happy and You Know It, belting out, "If you're happy and you know it, smash a head, bang bang," all while crushing Darkseid's minions' skulls with each line. Harley Quinn's love for demolishing crania is undeniable, making her one of the most brutal Batman villains who definitely isn't holding back.
Number 10, Apocalypse. There is a whole reality based on the question of what would happen if Apocalypse was unable to be stopped, if he basically, just pushed through and stopped holding back. This reality is known as Earth 295, aka the Age of Apocalypse. And in this world, Apocalypse becomes pretty much inevitable thanks to the early demise of one man, Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. The reality of Age of Apocalypse just goes to show you what a force Apocalypse is, and if an alternate reality where Apocalypse literally rules the world isn't enough to convince you of how unstoppable this villain can be, you can also turn to a more recent X-Men event, Ten of Swords, aka the Otherworld Tournament. During this fight, Apocalypse faced his wife, who was possessed by Annihilation, and even against the seemingly unbeatable foe that was Annihilation, annihilation, Apocalypse somehow managed to win, saving his wife and freeing her from the influence of the Golden Helm, while also saving basically all of Krakoa, mutant kind, and Otherworld. Yeah, so this wasn't his most villainous moment per se, but normally Apocalypse is a villain, and this just serves as another example to show you another time when he decided to stop holding back, so there you go. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button and turning on that bell so you don't miss out on any good old nerdy content. Number 9. Darkseid. Jack Kirby, the famed writer, artist, and comic book creator, created Darkseid, who made his first appearance in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen issue 134 in 1970. Darkseid is a tyrannical ruler of the planet Apokolips, and is depicted as a new god in his comic book appearances. His ultimate goal is to gain control over the anti-life equation and to eliminate all hope and free will in sentient beings, basically enslaving the multiverse. He is considered one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe and is known as one of Superman's most formidable enemies, and honestly, the Justice League's probably most formidable enemy. For most heroes, it's considered somewhat of an honor to have faced and beaten Darkseid one-on-one. Darkseid was originally known as Prince Euaxus, the son of Yuga Khan and Queen Hegra of Apokolips. He seized control of the planet from his older brother, Drax, by eliminating him when Drax attempted to claim the fabled Omega Force, with Euaxus betraying his brother and taking the Omega Force for himself. With his newfound power, Euaxus' skin turned to stone and he took on a new name, Darkseid. But that's not all. While he is the ruler of Apokolips, Darkseid has also succeeded in the past in conquering Earth, at least temporarily, using the anti-life equation, refusing to hold back once he had it in his possession. Number 8. Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain that is all smoke and mirrors and illusions, which makes a lot of folks consider him to be a not so real threat at times. Still, with the cinematic take on the character, we saw Mysterio almost completely dupe, I would say, the entire world. And even when he was quote-unquote defeated, he still kind of did just that. His plan here was to convince everyone he was a hero and win them over to his side, and even when he seemingly perished, he actually still managed to succeed in this goal. In the Old Man Logan universe, Mysterio is also the one behind defeating all, get that, all of the X-Men by tricking Wolverine into thinking all of his friends were really supervillains, thereby getting him to kill the entire X-Men team and school. Yikes. In other words, just because something isn't real doesn't mean that you shouldn't still, maybe fear it. A great illusion obviously can be more persuasive in some cases than reality itself, especially if you can't see reality because Mysterio's creating an illusion. Number 7. Hecate. While they may have not known it at the time, Hecate was also a very powerful Justice League foe. Here, interactions with the Justice League and her manipulation of them were not even recognized by the JLA themselves, but instead were taken note of by Justice League Dark, which is basically like Justice League, but they just do magic stuff and they work in the basement. Hecate would threaten the very makeup of the universe when she refused to hold back in the pages of Justice League Dark. And, you know, she almost won, so gotta take that into account.
Number 6. Wally West v. Inertia. Inertia was a young villainous Thaddeus Thawne. Inertia is to Bart Allen, aka Impulse, what Eobard Thawne is to Barry Allen. He is his reverse. Now, Inertia had been raised his whole life to absolutely despise speedsters of any kind. He learned to be a villain from others, but his actions were all his own. So, when Inertia made the mistake of taking the life of his opposite, Bart Allen, he would be made to suffer the consequences. Unfortunately for him, those consequences came in the form of Wally West, one of the most powerful speedsters ever. After taunting Wally about the fact that he just took the life of his sidekick, in All Flash #1, Wally takes the young villain who had the potential to be reformed and removes his ability to move at all. He traps Inertia in a museum as one of the exhibits, only able to blink once every 100 years. And he leaves the kid there still thinking in real time during all of this, meaning he's driven slowly and very assuredly insane. And just as the cherry on top, Wally left him facing the exhibit of Bart Allen, the man that Inertia could have been. It's an incredibly dark fate for a hero to impose on a villain, especially one who's like a sidekick. Number 5. Midnighter vs. Commander. Midnighter. The Authority is a really cool group from DC Comics' Wildstorm universe. The two most well-known heroes from the team would be Apollo and Midnighter, who are basically like Superman and Batman respectively, only these two are husband and husband, and Midnighter is almost insane. He is like Batman, but like Batman who is also mixed with the Punisher and maybe a little bit of like Deadpool, I think? And these stories get dark. In Mark Millar's run on the Authority, a villain by the name of Commander makes the very big mistake of attacking and forcing himself on Apollo. This was a hell of a mistake. In response to those actions, Apollo, after recovering, burns Commander's legs so that he cannot escape, and Midnighter shows up with a jackhammer, and the rest is something we are kept from seeing, thankfully. If you want to check it out for yourself, you may be my guest, but you've been warned, it's quite haunting. Number 4, Black Panther and the Skrulls. Wakanda, like the other fictional kingdoms of Atlantis and Latveria, is protected by a man who will do pretty much anything to protect his people. T'Challa doesn't really have the luxury of sparing those that would do harm to his incredibly advanced home. But Wakanda is also one of the #1 places targeted when an invading force wants to take over Earth. So, taking those two facts into account, when the Skrulls tried to invade Wakanda to start their mission of dominating the world, T'Challa, the king of one of the most advanced nations in said world, and his wife, Storm of the X-Men, one of the most powerful mutants alive, left those aliens with a clear message. After tricking the Skrulls into attacking their own men for information, the Skrulls send out their best warriors for the task of taking down the pair. But just as those toughest warriors are gone from sight, an army of Wakandan soldiers breaks into the Skrull ship and leaves not a single Skrull soul alive. While that's happening, those toughest warriors are turned into pulp by Black Panther, with T'Challa using their bodily fluids to write "This is what happens when you invade Wakanda" on the bridge of the Skrull ship. Damn. Number 3, One Rule. Batman Hush could in its entirety be seen as a brutal moment. It strikes at the childhood life of Bruce Wayne himself, pushing Batman to a point we rarely ever see. In Batman issue number 614, right smack dab in the middle of the Hush story arc, Tommy Elliot, the childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, loses his life at what seems to be the hands of the Joker. All the years and years of distress caused by the Joker, the people he hurt, the lives lost, they all fuel this rage inside of Bruce Wayne, who begins to lay a spectacular beatdown on the Joker, knocking out both Harley Quinn and even Catwoman, who both try to stop him. Batman almost goes to the point of permanently bringing an end to the Joker, beginning to put aside his morals to finally be rid of this homicidal plague on Gotham City. It's not until Jim Gordon intervenes while Batman has his gloves around the Joker's neck that the Dark Knight finally relents. The worst part about this, though, is that if Batman did go through with it, the Joker wasn't even the one responsible for the crime in the first place. Number 2, Captain America. We love Civil War. Not the actual Civil War, the Marvel one. So many great examples of superheroes fighting other superheroes, but the main star of the show in this conflict is Iron Man versus Captain America. And while the climactic fight ultimately ended in a Captain America favored draw, I'd say the first major fight was definitely more of a win for Tony Stark. In issue number 3 and 4 of the main Civil War comic, a battle takes place between the forces of both Cap and Stark. While Steve is fighting Spider-Man, Iron Man comes swooping in, attacking with an armor that's analyzed every punch Cap has ever thrown, and he just starts going to town on this guy, feeding him the left right until Cap is absolutely battered. Cap still doesn't go down, so Tony uses a high frequency that shuts down the human brain. He's about to end the fight when Hercules jumps in, attacking with an oil tanker truck, which definitely would do some damage. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Sentry ripping Ares in half. The Sentry is a character that deserves more spotlight. Problem is, he's kind of one of the most powerful superheroes Marvel has. Obviously, that's debatable, but this guy has the power to destroy pretty much anybody in the Marvel universe. He has reassembled his own molecules and taken out the Molecule Man, for example. He's almost too powerful to include in a lot of stories, but it's the fight between the Sentry and Ares, the literal god of war, in issue 2 of Marvel's Siege event that really left people slack-jawed and looking for emotional support. Ares in this story started on the Dark Avengers before redeeming himself and joining the good guys. He had been showing how awesome he is, and he turns his sights on Norman Osborn, which unfortunately means that Ares now has to face his friend, the Sentry. Sentry punches Ares halfway across Asgard, and maybe 2 or 3 punches later, he grabs both ends of the God of War and rips him completely in half. Not only did it leave everyone on the page frozen, it also left readers completely stunned.